This is Join Us in France, episode 286. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and on today's episode, I bring you a conversation with Michael Grove about how to choose a great restaurant in France. I know you can't come to France right now, and as I record this, our restaurants are still closed. Most of them are still closed. But this pandemic will not last forever, and you'll be able to come to France soon. And time flies anyway, right? I mean, I know it feels like a long time, but probably by maybe 2021. Let's be hopeful. I recorded this episode just as the lockdown started in France, and I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but you should know that things have improved greatly, as I'll talk about in my personal update after the episode. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/286, and if you're planning a trip to France, the site is chock full of great resources, and you should check it out. Bonjour, Michael, and welcome to Join Us in France again.
Bonjour, Annie.
Nice to talk to you. We've done
un plaisir.
Oui, ça fait très plaisir. We've done an episode about Corsica together. Then we chatted about this COVID-19 in France and the consequences on our daily lives. And now we're talking about how to find a restaurant in France, because hopefully we'll all be able to find restaurants very soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yes.
After April 30th or maybe into May, we can see some relief.
Yes, we hope to. So, how do you go about finding a good restaurant in France?
Well, I have a couple ways. Well, more than a couple, but the major way I find most of my restaurants now is by simply walking around. But I have the advantage of time because I'm in France, as you know, for long periods of time, 6 months out of the year. So I spend a lot of time out and about and walking, and I've found that I kind of know what I'm looking for when I'm looking for restaurants. And I usually take my phone and snap a picture of a restaurant that interests me, and then later I will make a note of it. Good. Most of the restaurants that I have visited in Marseille, for example, I've found by walking.
Yeah.
But for those who are planning a trip and don't have the ability to stay for long periods in France, I have a couple suggestions. My first go-to place is the Michelin restaurant search engine, and it's in both French and English, and I find that invaluable. And it's not just for those Michelin-starred restaurants.
Right.
They have a number of levels of designations to separate the restaurants. And, for example, I really, really like the Michelin Bib restaurants, B-I-B. And that's one step below the 1 star.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have another designation, which is a table simple, I think, and little assiette symbols. And that's what I use mostly. And sometimes they have some restaurants that have not been visited. I don't know why they are on the website in the search engine, and I generally ignore them.
Right. So maybe it's because recommendations from other travelers, maybe?
No.
All
the restaurants, as far as I know, on the search engine are there because they've been visited.
Okay.
And how the other ones that have not been visited get on the website, I don't know.
Right. But you can ignore them because you can tell if they've been visited or not.
Yes, because they've been. There are symbols and there's comments by the person who represents Michelin.
Cool. Do you find the French and the English have the same information?
Yes, but I find the French one better. I prefer it. Maybe it's because I've learned how to use their symbols. One doesn't need to know French to use the French site, as long as you can figure out those symbols.
Okay, well, good to know.
But I don't know why I don't use the English one. Maybe it's just from habit, but I do prefer the French one.
Okay.
But the second way that I find restaurants is there are some individuals that I've discovered who live in France and for long periods of time who go to restaurants a lot. And then they write about it. And I've given you a list of several of them who write in either French or English.
Yep.
And in English, David Leibowitz is one of my favorites. And I imagine many of your listeners will know about him. He's a man who moved to France about 10 years ago. He used to be the pastry chef at a really well-known restaurant in Oakland called Chez Panisse. And he's written a number of cookbooks. He goes to restaurants often and writes really well about them. Mm-hmm. Another person is another cookbook writer, Patricia Wells, and she has been in France for even longer. She's written books about Provence cooking, I think. Mm-hmm. And I find her really reliable as well. Mm-hmm. And to the French, there's one individual in particular, and this is Gilles Pudalski.
Yep.
He writes in French, and you will need to, maybe if you don't read French, copy and paste what he writes into Google Translate, and you'll get a sense of what he thinks about the restaurant. And another one I don't see too much lately because he's stopped, I think, is Simon Says. And he writes or was writing for the Le Monde and would have a column on Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
I've given you a number of other restaurants.
Yeah, there's some others, that I will list.
Sites that you can post.
Yeah.
And then also, finally, I wouldn't dismiss the tourist guides. When I planned my trip for Corsica, I used the Guide Vert.
The Guide Vert is very good.
Corsica.
Yeah.
Oh, it's excellent.
Yeah.
And you can get it in English and other languages.
Yeah.
And once I figured out the structure, it was invaluable.
Yeah.
And some of the restaurants you may or may not find in the search engine. So those are the major ways. I walk around and then I check those websites if I want to plan in advance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, as a French person, I just go with my nose. And I must admit also I base it on the price because I have come to realize that if you pay $30 for lunch, usually it's going to be a nice meal.
Yes, that's a good price point.
Yeah, if you
20 to 30.
Right. If you pay $40 for dinner, it's probably going to be nice. And I'm not including wine in this, right? This is just for the meal.
Yes.
So typically if I want something nice, I'm somewhere I'm not familiar with, I will base it on that. And also my nose and my eyes, that's just how you do it. But it's true that as a French person, I spend very little time asking for recommendations on restaurants or reading websites about restaurants. Now, I might be the only one doing this, not doing this, but I don't eat out that much. And I know what I like. So it's fairly easy for me to find it. I don't know. And it's not a big priority for me. Like, I'd rather find out about something historical about a town I'm going to visit than about the best restaurant there.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
I'm sort of the opposite. That's an important part of my day. And when the restaurants were open, I was eating in a restaurant, eating lunch, a 2, 3-course, sometimes 3-course meal at lunch every day. So I might be in France 180 days, and I'll eat in 180 restaurants.
Right.
Maybe not all of them.
You try a lot. You try a lot of restaurants, which I really don't. I really don't. People ask me for recommendations. I'm like, I don't know. I only eat out if there's no way I can eat at home.
Oh,
really?
Well, I remember listening to some of your podcasts when you were talking about food, and I remember laughing once when you were talking about Yelp or TripAdvisor, and I started laughing because I agreed completely with what you had been saying. If I remember correctly, you said you never look to those two sites, or
No.
generally, I think you said that you might look at the Yelp in French, but certainly not in English.
Right.
So I distrust the crowdsourcing reviews online, and I don't go to those sites.
Well, the thing is, if you're reading reviews about a French restaurant written by an American, they're going to base it on whether they found people were friendly, because they don't know what the dish is supposed to taste like. I mean, especially if it's their first visit to France, say they eat a bœuf bourguignon. Well, it could be the worst one in the country. They don't know, but it tasted fine to them, and the people were friendly. So 5 stars, you know. So I don't trust those very much.
No, neither do I. And sometimes I will go there maybe to check an address if I don't have a correct address. And I will
sure.
check. That's about the only reason I might check those sites.
But Google has gotten better now. So now if you type in a restaurant name, they will usually do the sidebar where you have the address and a link to the website and the opening hours and things. So, you know.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's good. Yes.
Yeah.
The other suggestion I would make is some historical restaurants. Should we talk about some of those?
Yes. I do go to those. I go to those. I must admit, when I'm in Paris, I try historical restaurants.
Yeah, those are the historical restaurants I'm thinking of are in Paris, and some of them. There's one section on Saint-Germain-des-Prés, and you'll find the restaurants Brasserie Lippe, Café de Flore, what else? Le Demago. And then I would offer one other one that not too many people talk about is Le Bonaparte.
Yeah.
That's just a half a block away. And all of those brasseries have got a long history with famous writers and artists and sculptors. And it's also pretty close to the, kind of the touristy areas.
Right. You forgot the Procope in Saint-Germain-des-Prés.
Oh, I would have mentioned Procope. Yes, Procope is one. I think it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, restaurants.
It is the oldest, yeah.
In Paris, and if you don't go there to eat, at least go into the Passage, the little alley street by it, and that is really, really.
La Cour du Commerce Saint-André.
Yes.
So if you take my voice map tours, I will take you to all these places and I will explain the story. But you can go by yourself.
Do you talk about the Comédie Française and Molière? I think they were. I
don't, because when you do a voice map tour, you can only talk for so long, and so I have to concentrate on a few things that are, the top things in this area. There's lots of other things I could talk about, but then it would be a standing tour and not a walking tour, and so that's a problem. Yeah. But these classic restaurants sometimes. They're a little bit overpriced, but
they are.
But you get so much just from the atmosphere and the surroundings. Brasserie Lippe, I like it because they have all these silly signs about "Gentlemen, don't feed your dogs at our place," yes. Which makes
right now. I think Café de Flore. I think there's a competition somewhat between Café de Flore and Les Deux Magots.
Right, which are right next to each other.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I think Café de Flore has probably got the thumbs up right now.
Yeah.
Actually, I see when I'm walking by these days in the last couple of years, there have been more patrons outside than at Les Deux Magots.
Yes,
but it is expensive.
Yeah, it's more expensive than somewhere else, but I think it's a good experience, especially the Procope, I think, because this is a restaurant that has so much history in it. Like they have a Bonaparte hat on the first floor, but you can't go in if you're not a patron. So if you want to see it, go in there, you can have, their lunch is like around 35 and dinner around 55. It's not like 2,000% more than some other restaurant. It's just it's 20% more maybe, but and the food is decent.
I would call it decent. Yes.
Yeah, it's good. It's not the best food. It's not the best meal you have in Paris probably, but it'll be decent.
Yes. The other area that I would mention is at the confluence of Boulevard Raspail and Boulevard Montparnasse. Mm-hmm. And that has a number of restaurants, Le Dôme, La Rotonde, Le Select, La Coupole.
Yes.
And all of those restaurants also attracted a number of artists and writers.
Right.
And if you don't want to go into those, those sets of restaurants I prefer over Les Deux Magots and
of course. Flore. The food is better.
Yes. And in fact, President Macron's favorite restaurant, or one of his favorite restaurants, is La Rotonde.
Right.
So he goes there.
Right. Right.
And if you don't want to, this is kind of a side issue, but if you don't want to eat in one of those, there's a Entrecôte restaurant a couple doors down, and another franchise called, I don't know what it's called. It's a fish, it's part of the DOR family of restaurants, and that's not too far away.
You mean Léon? No.
Excuse me?
I'm not familiar with the DOR.
They have fish, crustaceans, fish.
Okay.
Restaurants. There's one by the Gare de Lyon, and there's one there at the confluence. It's kind of diagonally from Le Dôme.
Okay.
Across the street, off to the an angle.
So when I'm in Montparnasse, I go eat at La Coupole. I really like La Coupole.
Yes.
But there's many that are good, and that's a good place to go if you're going to be visiting the catacombs or the new French Resistance museum that's right by the catacombs, because you're maybe a kilometer away.
Yeah,
from that area. Yeah.
You need to go up Raspail into the 14th arrondissement to get to those catacombs.
Right, and so when you're planning your trip, it's worth looking at a nice place to eat wherever you're going to be visiting.
For example, Annie, if you've been a fan of the Jardin du Luxembourg, and right close by is the Pantheon, and these restaurants that I just mentioned is just a few streets away.
Right, they're not that far, so it's worth going. Yes, absolutely.
Well, the third historical type of restaurants are these bouillon restaurants that I found out about just a couple of years ago. And probably the most well-known is Chartier. And that is, I forget the arrondissement. It's on Faubourg Montmartre or something like that. I forget.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know where that one is.
And that is the Chartier. And that has had a number of scenes from films shot there. I think there was a scene from Amélie was shot in that restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
The other names are Bouillon Racine and Bouillon Chartier Montparnasse, and that used to be called Montparnasse 1900.
Oh, okay.
I think. And then Bouillon Julien. Those are probably the most famous. There's one that I would caution your listeners, and that's called Bouillon Pigalle, and that's up in the Pigalle area, but it's not a restaurant like the other ones that I have mentioned. It's really fairly new. These bouillon restaurants have got a really nice, really elegant, maybe sometimes gaudy, Art Nouveau, Belle Epoque decor inside, and it's really breathtaking sometimes.
Right. So if you're going to be visiting the Cluny Museum, you're very close to Bouillon Racine on Rue Racine. Very, very close, like 100 meters away, maybe 200 meters away. So it's definitely worth doing both of those at the same time. So when you plan your day in Paris, Cluny Museum, Bouillon Racine. Voila, done. Yes. You'll have a good time. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and then walk around. So you walk around and go to a good restaurant. You have a good tourist site. And those are the three major things for me when I'm out and about.
Right. And exercise. So before this whole pandemic came down, I started working on a Latin Quarter walking tour, which I can't complete until I can return to Paris. But obviously, I include all of these things in those voice map walking tours. Yeah.
Super. So those are
the nice historical restaurants, and other cities have them too, right? I mean,
yeah,
not as
I'm not
famous.
familiar enough with them though,
Right?
to talk.
Yeah.
But I can talk about some other kinds of restaurants not in Paris. I mean, we can maybe talk about the Bouchon in Lyon. I like going to those. Or in your area, there are the cassoulet restaurants in the Southwest France cuisine.
Yep.
A few years ago, I went to Toulouse specifically to sample the cassoulet. The cassoulet at Toulouse is my favorite variety of cassoulet.
Yeah, it's very good. We make a good cassoulet here.
Yes, and I think one of my favorite destinations in Toulouse, actually, I think I told you this before, is that I don't know what it's called, the Marché Victor Hugo.
Oh, Victor Hugo, yeah.
I just absolutely adored that place.
Right.
I count 5, 6, 7 fromageries inside, maybe 5 or 6 inside.
Yeah.
And then outside, or on the street outside, where there was another 2 or 3 of them.
Right. No,
it's
very nice. And I've been going to Victor Hugo market for years because I have a good friend whose mother owns a duck place, Annie Pensionnat, and she, so I've been going there for decades.
Oh, she's on the corner somewhere in that market, isn't she?
No, she's in the center. She's in the center, and now she's retired. Her daughter has taken over, but it's very fun. And so what this is it's a food market that's open like 7:30 a.m. till 1 or 1:30 p.m. But then there are restaurants above the covered market that are very good. And these are like all in a row. And of course, nobody can go there right now because it's packed and it's like you're within inches of other people. But it's lovely. And you can just walk down this one hall and see what people are eating and decide where you want to eat. And there's some of everything. Yeah, it's very fun.
And there's another...
But it doesn't look very nice. I have to tell everybody, if you pick your restaurant by how it looks on Instagram, you'll never go there.
Upstairs, you mean? Are you talking about the upstairs?
Yeah, the upstairs or the whole market. Right. Or the whole market. Yes. Victor Hugo market is not glorious looking, okay?
Yes.
It's actually pretty sad looking. So that's another thing I want to say is, it's okay to look for places on Instagram and stuff, but realize that only the good-looking places will do well on Instagram, and it can be fantastic and not do well on Instagram.
Well, I love that market, and when I return to Toulouse, that's one of the first places that I will go back to. Another one is Les Halles in Lyon, and that's much more. It's maybe newer, I don't know, or. But you can get crustaceans there and meat and in restaurants that are open. Yeah. So that's another favorite place. Where I like to go, besides the Bouchon in Lyon.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Lyon, Toulouse, Marseille, the Bouillabaisse.
Of course.
A lot of people think about the Bouillabaisse, but also there's a lot of North African. Who live there, so you'll find that influence in the restaurants. Tunisia, Moroccan foods. Yeah. Couscous is a favorite.
Yeah. Now you're talking.
Yes. I love that. Crustaceans.
Yeah.
There's one restaurant called Toinou, Toinou, I think.
Okay.
Toinou. And you can see these big boxes of oysters and clams and shrimp outside. And I think they supply restaurants, but they have a restaurant right there as well. And you line up and you tell them what you want in terms of the crustaceans, and then you sit down and then they bring you out this big tray with ice and all of this.
We have something similar in Toulouse called Le Pyrénéen. I'll add it to your list because that's one where I've been to a lot.
Okay,
for a long time. I mean, I started going to Le Pyrénéen. Whenever anybody took me on a date, I would ask to go to Pyrénéen because I loved it so much. So it's been there a long, long time.
Yeah.
So, and it's a seafood kind of place.
Yes. Well, what about do you ever go to, I mentioned earlier, the Entrecote restaurants in Paris. Do you go to Entrecote restaurants?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the franchise kinds of places.
Yes. Entrecote is a restaurant that you will find in several cities in France. They are, it's not a chain, but it's family. It's owned by a family that they fought and blah, blah, blah. But they have this secret recipe for the sauce.
Yes, I know for the sauce.
That I have tried to replicate many times. And I can get somewhat close, but no cigar. But so they all have the same sauce, so it's fine. And I must have eaten at l'Entrecote 100 times.
Yeah, the layout or the offering is always the same as well. In fact, I was in a Entrecote in Lyon, and I walked in, sat down, and she says, "Have you ever been here before? Or have you been to an Entrecote before?" And I said, "Yes." And so she didn't even give me the menu, and she just says, "Well, do you want it? How do you want how do you want your meat? You want it rare or whatever? And what kind of wine do you want?" And that was it.
Yeah.
And she was gone.
Yeah,
and you get unlimited French fries and.
Yep, a generous portion of entrecôte, which is a cut of beef. You get a little salad.
A salad
that's already pre-mixed and seasoned and all that. So you can't ask for the seasoning on the side. Forget that. So at l'entrecôte, I've never seen the menu except for the dessert menu. They do have
that's another choice.
Yeah, the dessert you have to choose. But otherwise, it's how do you like your meat cooked and what color wine, if any.
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly. And I love it.
Yeah.
I started collecting those restaurants in different cities. So I've been to yours in Toulouse and Lyon, Paris a couple times. There's a couple of 2, 3 of them, I think, in Paris.
Yeah, there's one in Bordeaux. Montpellier has one too.
I've been to Montpellier.
Yeah, they have them in several cities. So that's l'entrecôte.
And the other one I haven't been to in a while is the Chez Léon. Is that a franchise that's just in Paris?
No, it's mostly in the north of France. Chez Léon is it's like well, the way they present themselves is like Belgian restaurant with French fries and which we all know are Belgian and beer and things like that.
Yeah, you mentioned some others that I've seen, the Buffalo Grill and the Hippopotamus. Have you eaten in those?
Yes.
I have not tried them yet.
Right. So these are chain restaurants that you often find along freeways. So right. So you're gonna have Buffalo Grill, Courtepaille is very big. Autogrill, L'Arche, Hippopotamus. They're all they're big chains that will be on freeway exits. Sometimes in the city, sometimes they are in the suburbs as well. So
I see them in Paris.
Yeah, there's a few in Paris.
Buffalo Grill, the Hippopotamus is in Paris.
But as soon as you start driving around France, you'll see a lot of those chains because they're big. I mean, and these are places that French people really enjoy.
It's probably like we have in the States, at least in the Northwest, Denny's.
Yes, exactly. It's like an Applebee's or a Denny's or something like that. It's a chain that people like because they know exactly what they enjoy eating there, and it's familiar, and you get the same dish pretty much anywhere you go. We're missing a few, but I can't think of their names. There's one called La Pomme d'Api or something, Pomme something or other.
I don't know.
That was pretty good too. I tried that around Limoges. And some of those, they are bigger in some areas than others. But generally speaking, if you're driving around France and you're stopping at one of those restaurants along the highways, they're not bad, really. It's, they're fine. All right, so now let's talk about a few things, wondering if these things are true that you've heard about French restaurants or not.
Okay.
For example, the first one is, people say you shouldn't eat at a restaurant that has a menu in English. What do you say?
No, because I think No. Because, or at least my experience, I'm in large cities, and you're going to get a number of, English-speaking tourists, or you'll get the Germans or Italians or other nationalities, and the common language among them is English.
Absolutely.
So I would not go into a restaurant because of that. You're going to be missing something.
Right.
Because even if you go into a Michelin star restaurant, they're going to have menus in English.
Absolutely. So don't even consider that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Some people say you shouldn't eat at a restaurant that has photos on the menu. What do you say about that?
I don't see that very often. I mean, I see some restaurants that have, these fancy ardoises on the outside, and they may have a picture, but I typically ignore that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you, because I just don't encounter it very much, and I generally ignore that.
Right.
It is not a part of my decision.
Right. So these chain restaurants that I told you about, Buffalo Grill and places like that, they have photos on the menu, and they're fine anyway. So it just depends on the category of restaurant you're eating at. If it's a chain restaurant, you can expect that they've hired a photographer, because taking good pictures of food is hard. Okay, I try all the time, and it's really hard. It's really hard.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So to make it work, you have to have a professional photographer who will have a lot of equipment to make this pretty. And so it's only the chain restaurants that do that and pull it off. So that's why we don't see a lot of photos on the menu, but it's not necessarily an indication of quality or lack of quality, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. The next question is, should so some people say in France, you should not ask for a doggy bag.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I have not asked for a doggy bag, but I know of others who have, both Native Americans who live in France, and I have seen, I think maybe one or two French people. Generally, it's not done, but I have not ever seen a waiter deny it or even mock someone who was asked.
Right.
And they've been generous.
Right.
They said, of course.
Yes. Typically, they may not have the to-go boxes that you're used to in the U.S. Very few restaurants have those in France because they're waste of plastic, and, well, you shouldn't take those. But also, French restaurants don't serve you so much that you have enough for 3 meals. Most French restaurants. So mostly you're going to eat what they give you, and that will be the end of that. But I have eaten in some places where I couldn't finish what they gave me. I asked for a doggy bag because I have dogs to give to the dogs, and it's fine. You can do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
You can
yes.
do that.
It's typically I get my meal is sufficient, and I'm not overfed.
Right.
And if it's most often it's been like a pizza. I've seen, but they have takeouts for pizza anyway.
Yes. So if it's the kind of restaurant that has to-go boxes, they'll put it in a to-go box, but don't expect it at every French restaurant because they just don't stock that kind of item. All right. People say you shouldn't order white wine with beef and red wine with fish.
Oh, I went through that phase many years ago, and I would even worry that I would look silly in the eyes of a French waiter if I didn't order the right wine. And I discovered very quickly that the French drink what they want to drink, and they just simply ask you, well, what color do you want? And generally, I will have a red wine with meat, but I might have a light red wine with some fish, some kinds of fish. And I've been to some restaurants where the waiters will choose the wine for me. I ask them to do that, and that's usually a consultation with the chef.
Yeah.
And they will give me a light red with the fish.
Yeah.
So I think you go to France, and I think the first thing is to drink wine and don't worry about that color.
Yeah. Yeah, you drink the one that you like, and nobody cares what you drink, really, or don't drink.
Absolutely.
People write to me and say, "We don't drink wine. Is that going to be a problem?" No, it's not. No, it's not. But on the other hand, if you're going to a place that does a prix fixe, so it's going to be like a set price for lunch. A few places in France, most of them don't do this anymore, but a few places used to always include wine with that. And some of them,
I've seen that.
Right. It's getting rare because French people drink less and less wine at lunch. So they don't do that anymore. But some places I've been with non-wine drinkers where the wine was included, and then they say, "Oh, can I have a soda instead, or a juice or something?" And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. So it just depends on the place. But most places don't include the wine anymore, so that shouldn't even come up very much at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of French drinking sodas now during lunch, and beer.
Yes.
Beer is really popular.
Yes, you can. If you want a Coke, order a Coke. Nobody cares what you drink. Nobody cares, really, honestly.
Yes.
Like, do what you want. Yeah. So, another question: is it true that you don't need to tip in France?
Oh, I don't know about the need, but I certainly do. I would never leave a table without leaving a tip. And again, this is another phase I went through, and I was really anguished over how much. And I generally give somewhere between 8 and 10% in addition to whatever's on the bill.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more than that because, for example, I might get a cafe for $1.50, and I might leave €2 and say, "Oh, that's okay."
Keep the change, yeah. So if you do the math, it's more.
Just keep the change.
Yeah.
So absolutely, one of the things that I've learned I've learned to appreciate is what these restaurants manage to accomplish, and how professional they are.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah,
they work hard, long hours.
Yep.
Long hours. And they have a lunch hour, and it goes for 2-3 hours, and then they come back, and there's a break of 2-3 hours, and then they come back for the dinner service. And I've been walking by some of these restaurants in my neighborhood, and they are up into the wee hours. And so I appreciate what they serve, how they treat me, and I give them extra. I tip them.
Yeah. So in France, a tip is really a tip because waiters get a decent wage. Now, if you ask me if I'd want to work in a restaurant for the kind of money they make, I would say no. But when I was 18, 20, I would have. Because, as a matter of fact, I did. Because it's a decent wage. It's a living wage, let's put it this way. So it's not absolutely necessary that you tip, but it is much, much appreciated when you do, and I rarely leave a place without leaving some kind of tip. Now, the difference is you don't need to work out 10%, 20%, whatever. You often just, if you pay cash, you often just leave a few coins, or you ask them not to bring you the change or whatever, and it's good enough. It's good enough. There's no set tip that you should do. If you leave €2 for lunch, it's fine. It's it's €2 they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, so, I think in the United States, we're used to the 15 or 20%, and so that's what causes us some concern.
Right.
But in France, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
And
right.
So the rules are a lot looser, and the amount that you want to leave is what will leave and can leave. And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and it's fine.
But I also, I would like to add that I do go back to some restaurants because I am for example, in Antibes for 3 months, and I do return to some restaurants. And I have learned that after leaving tips, I am kind of like a king.
Yeah, you're treated better, aren't you? Yes.
Well, yeah, I don't know about better, but it's just there's a difference, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, the food is good and the service is good in those restaurants, and I leave a good tip. And I think they remember.
Yes,
So
they do. They do.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have time.
Some of these places.
Absolutely. Just be a nice person and leave a tip. You know, be a nice guy or woman. Be nice. That's it. Okay, one more question. Well, maybe we have time for one more or two more. I don't know. Is it true that you should try traditional French foods when you're in France? So things like escargot, foie gras, croque-monsieur, poulet fermier, steak frites, tarte tatin, all of that.
I would, if your listeners are going to France, I don't see why not. I mean, I did it. I tried escargot for the first time and foie gras, and I find them delicious.
Yeah.
I have some favorite French meals. For example, the poulet rôti. What's it called?
Poulet fermier.
Fermier rôti.
Yeah.
And if I can get what's it called? The blue. They color code the chickens, or is it the rouge chicken?
Le poulet de Bresse or the fermier. Yeah. So,
sometimes those are so good.
Yes.
And so I would recommend thinking about some of the French dishes that maybe your listeners don't see in their own communities.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary to try maybe a tête de veau or what's it called? The tablier de sapeur.
Yeah.
Intestine type of dishes, but I think there's some that are manageable. For example, why not try a foie gras with a sweet wine, a Sauternes? And that is just out of this world.
Oh, sure, yeah. Sure.
So
I want to recommend. So I'm going to type for a second. There are two other episodes that I'm going to recommend. One is a cornucopia of bizarre French foods. That's episode 193, and it's one where, Elise and I talk about the bizarre foods that French people eat, and some of them we can stomach, and most of them we cannot. You will find them, you will find them on occasion on the menu. It's good to be prepared. If you want to try them, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's two things you need to know. First, you can't expect that every restaurant is going to serve all these bizarre French foods because even French people don't like to eat them that often. And two, know what you're getting. Like, don't.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Do not. That's one of my rules. Do not order something you don't know what it is.
Yes.
I would not be brave. Look at your dictionary on your phone before ordering something.
Yeah. Use a translator, your Google Translate or whatever, and it's going to give you a direct translation. That's why listening to this episode helps, because then you'll be familiar. You will have heard of them anyway. So that was episode 93. And another one I recommend is one called 50 Must-Know French Phrases for Hungry Visitors. That was episode 162. And that's where I list 50 things that you will frequently hear at French restaurants. And what do they mean? So this is for people who are trying to speak French.
Cool. I think you can become really quite articulate, because if you think about it, when you go into a restaurant, the vocabulary is fairly limited.
Yes.
And if you learn some of those words, suddenly you are a fluent French speaker.
Right, because that's all you need for those restaurants. In a restaurant, that's the French you can expect to hear. Every now and then you'll be thrown off. But if you're at least familiar, so listen to episode 162. It'll help you make sense of that. And the last question I want us to answer is it true that you must pay for bottled water at a restaurant in France?
No, I think it's the law that you can get carafe d'eau. If you go into a restaurant and you order bottled water, you are asked if you want it flat or gazeuse, and you will end up paying for it.
Yes.
But if you order a carafe d'eau, they need to serve, they're required, I think, by law to serve you tap water.
Yes. So
water.
even if you order a coffee, you can ask for un café et un verre d'eau.
Yes.
You can ask
and that water will not be charged.
Right, and they won't charge for the water. You can ask for an ice cream cone and un verre d'eau.
Yes.
Right? And that's totally fine. It's totally expected. Now, if they ask you if you want, fizzy water or if you want Perrier or something, then obviously you're going to pay for that.
Yeah, you've got to be careful because they will ask you at the beginning what kind of water you want, and you've got to make sure that you are clear. At least I have to do that because I'm not sure if they're asking me if I want the paying kind of water or not, and so I always just say une carafe d'eau.
Right. Une carafe d'eau is free. That's the rule. That's how it works. They don't even ask me. They're like, no, she doesn't look fancy enough to drink Perrier, okay? I'll just bring her the tap water. It's fine.
Although I did start ordering bottles of water on Corsica. There's Orenza, I think it's called. And for some reason, I fell in love with that water.
Ah, special.
I don't know why. But, yeah.
Okay, let's slide in one last one. Okay. Is it true that you must speak French or you'll get terrible service?
In a French restaurant?
Yes.
Oh, no, they're very accommodating. No. In fact, I would even complain that sometimes with me they shift too quickly into English if they see that I'm a tourist or I'm not French. I mean, they identify me right away when I walk into a restaurant.
Well, that's because you're in Antibes and you're in the Riviera,
yes.
where pretty much it's a requirement that the waiters must speak English. Now, if you went to Auch or those places in France that are rural, then maybe they don't know any English.
You're going to have some problems. I did walk the chemin some years ago, and I was in a lot of really small villages in southwest France, and there was no English, and so you need to figure out how to make your way.
Yeah.
And the menus will not be in English.
Right.
So, but they're really generous and kind, and they're everybody that I encounter, they make an effort to help you.
Sign language. And if you can't speak, take photos of what you want and then show them. There you go.
Yeah.
That works. All right. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Michael, it's been lovely talking to you. Yeah, well, you've been patient because we were cut off a few times, but of course I'll cut all of that out of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Skype sometimes. I might have to switch to Zoom. I don't know. I should try it.
Oh, yeah, I have a friend here. That's what they use. It's mainly used for group kind of
right, and for work.
And
right.
I suppose there's a 2-person group, and that will work.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Uh-oh.
Oh, you're welcome.
Merci. Au revoir.
Are you there?
Oui.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. I don't have any new patrons to thank this week. Sad face. But you know what? I am super grateful for all my current patrons who have hung on with me. Thank you so very much. And I want to remind you that you can check out the extra rewards for patrons by going to patreon.com/join us. Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. I share exclusive content with my patrons, and I've been working on 4 rewards at once, which is why it's so slow. I don't know why I can't finish any of them, but get ready for some new rewards, patrons. And if you'd like to support the show without spending a penny you wouldn't have otherwise, before you go shopping on Amazon, click on the Amazon banner at the bottom of any page of joinusinfrance.com. Because you went to Amazon through Join Us, I get a small commission. It's enough to pay for all the money that it costs to host a show, to produce a show, all the tools that I use and that sort of thing. And that's very nice of you to know. Now, I don't know who's buying what, but I can see what you've bought in the last few weeks, and I went checking. Somebody really likes the Earth-Sea Cycle books by Ursula Le Guin and bought several of them. I haven't read them. Several of you bought hummus, Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt seems to be very popular. sodas, and even a hairdryer. I've been telling myself for years that as soon as my hairdryer bites the dust, I'm getting a new one. And you know what? It keeps going and going and going. Of course, I don't use it that much, but somebody bought orthotics insoles, and I wear those too. And also face mask and a digital thermometer, because these are the times that we're living in. Anyway, thank you so much for remembering to click on that banner ad at the bottom of any page on joinusinfrance.com. And I'm also very grateful for all the people who've offered to record an episode with me. I know you're not traveling right now, but there are lots of people who want to talk about their previous trips still, and that will help you plan yours. And they do a wonderful job preparing and thinking about the best of what they want to share with you, which is fantastic. For my personal update this week, well, I cannot tell you how relieved I am that life is slowly returning to somewhat normal in France. France started to reopen on May 11th. That was 11 days ago. And so far, there has been no big spike in the number of people infected with COVID-19. Quite the contrary, actually. The numbers are falling slowly, but it's continued to go down. French people have definitely changed their behavior, at least where I live. I haven't been outside of my area at all in the last few months, so I don't know, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to go somewhere soon. But I'm seeing a lot of masks, people using hand gel, people, swerving and giving space for other people to go by without being too close. It's very, very good to see. And the best part of this week is that I've started to socialize a little bit. I've invited my siblings and their spouses to come for apéritif. That was nice. Everyone brought things to share, and we stayed and we chatted until midnight. And the only reason why we left is because it was getting cold, because we were outside. We did this whole thing outside. And it's very weird to, when somebody goes to use your bathroom, I run in and do a quick wipe down with a bleach solution. It's so weird. I never did that before, but you got to do what you got to do. And we weren't quite 6 feet apart, but we knew none of us were sick, were feeling sick in any way. And it's been 5 days and we still aren't feeling sick, so we're probably fine. And Elise also came over to record an episode, and she stayed for lunch, which she normally doesn't have time to do, but she did have time this time, and it was great. We stayed outside also. The weather is so nice in southern France right now. Of course, we wanted to stay outside. And I'll release that episode in a couple of weeks, but it was wonderful to be able to talk to her and spend some time and shoot the breeze. And, it's a life changer for me anyway. And, Elise has been a really, really cautious. So, I knew it wasn't big risk to have her over. And that's going to be the big question going forward, isn't it? How much risk do we dare take? Obviously, I cannot answer that question for you because it depends so much on what's happening where you live. But I have to say, seeing people has been good for my morale and for my attitude. So I hope you get to that point soon if you're not there already. I'm even okay going to medical appointments. I saw my doctor this week. I had a blood test done this week. I went to the pharmacy, For a couple of months, the pharmacist would just refill your prescription, no questions asked. But now the pharmacists say, hey, you got to go back and see your doctor because it's safe by now. And she was right. It was safe. Everybody was wearing a mask. I was the only person in the waiting room. So it was fine. Personally, I'm not looking for zero risk because if I did that, I wouldn't leave my bed, I guess. But low risk. So I don't think it's crazy to start planning for a visit to France in 2021. I wouldn't book the plane tickets just yet, or the hotel or whatever just yet. But this is a really good time to start planning because I think it'll be sooner than you realize. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate if you'd share it with someone. They'll find the Join Us in France Travel podcast anywhere they get their podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and anywhere there are podcasts, truly. And if they've never listened to a podcast before, this is a biggie. Would you please help them? Because people think it's difficult, and it really isn't by now, but there's still that little difficulty to overcome. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Have a great week at home. Stay safe, stay healthy, plan your trip. If your heart desires, I think it'll do you good. And I'll talk to you next week. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.